All right, so here's chapter 2 of my discussion about the recent Q posts, and most importantly, the post that had to do with number 1249, which says Red Cross Iran, Red Cross Pakistan, Red Cross North Korea, Red Cross. Define smuggle. What is smuggled? What funds are used to pay for goods? These people are sick. Relevant to events about to unfold. Follow the executive orders. All right, so let's work this backward. Let's work this backward. So we have an executive order on December 21st of last year which said that corruption and trafficking and the whole sex business and the rest of that was going to be tantamount to allow the president through the Secretary of State and I believe the Treasury and perhaps the Attorney General to freeze assets to people that are engaged in these kinds of activities. And so we've been reminded about this again, and of course it goes also to Gitmo and possible military tribunals and some other parts, and exactly how that breaks out in a legal affair is impossible to tell. Freezing the assets in an emergency situation is all doable. Taking it away on a permanent basis may be a different thing, but of course it is also that it can be surrendered, assets can be surrendered because the person that is being held in a criminal way can surrender them as part of the criminal masterpiece or the criminal masterwork. So what we have here are the Red Cross, and we're talking about smuggling, and smuggling, as we talked about a little bit in submission number 1, was not only blood and blood plasma and transfusions and the rest of that, but obviously the Red Cross is involved in much more. And internationally at least, there are implications that it includes sex trafficking, probably, possibly slavery, possibly and likely body parts. We've got linkages to Planned Parenthood. And the soft end of it with Senator Grassley and one of the other Q posts is that there were potential illegal uses of fetuses and fetus parts and that people were making a profit. Well, my first answer to that is, of course they're making a profit. Why would they be in the business if they weren't going to make the profit? And while that seems unreasonable, that's not the problem. The problem is that this is the tip of the iceberg. It is the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg in the United States, which has to do with body part transmissions all over the world. So whether the Red Cross itself is involved or Planned Parenthood is itself involved, these people and the groups they run with are all involved in this kind of engaging multinational international process. And as you saw, if you watch American Made with Barry Seals, it's so easy to just toss the cocaine one way and the guns going the other. It's so easy to train people and turn them loose and bring them back and forth while you're doing all the rest of this. Well, look at this 40 years down the road, 30 or 40 years down the road, and say, who's doing this? Well, we learned as early as Vietnam that drugs could be put into coffins that were being brought back. The 50-odd thousand kids that died of my age that died in Vietnam, some of them had their coffins and body bags loaded with drugs. So what are they doing now? Well, it's cargo planes from Afghanistan with poppies going in NATO ships and Army, from what they tell me. It is us, the United States, protecting the poppy fields that the Taliban and ISIS and others have destroyed, which was probably the better thing for the world to do. It is trading in body parts, sex trafficking, taking over neutral situations, taking over emergency situations. I mean, who better to steal stuff? Who better to transport? Who better to pay with body parts and the rest of that than the Red Cross? I mean, you can run right in. You've got all these pallets full of stuff, and it's all good. And then you've got the empty plane coming back. It's perfect. And who's going to shut these folks down, right? Just like the NATO troops and the rest of them going from military base to military base. Who's going to shut these folks down and inspect them and check them to see what they're hauling. So it is a perfect cover. It is a Trojan horse on an ongoing basis, running from one place to the next worldwide, perhaps transmitting drugs, nuclear materials, and the rest of this kind of stuff. The aluminum canisters, all of the protective stuff for it. And so we have sex, trafficking, we have slavery, we have body parts, we have fluids of various kinds, we have corporate trade, we have pedophilia and more, and it's all stirred together. Who's paying with what? It doesn't even matter. It's when criminal activities take on worldwide consequences, and there are people who are playing these international games, everything is fungible. It's just a matter of how it trades off. So do body parts trade off for AK-47s? Of course. And how many do we trade? If you are a terrorist or you are hired by the CIA to be a terrorist, can you make extra money on the side by chopping people up and trading them for guns? Well, I don't know that that's happening, but there's no reason why it is not happening. So I put a thumbnail on here, and I want to tell you, it was a very somber moment for me, because the people in that picture are my grandparents and my parents on their marriage weekend. And here's my dad, the bomber pilot, the guy who fought in World War II, that faced flak, that helped Patton get released from the pincher movement he was involved in, who watched guys, 10 or 20 or 30% of them, drop out of the skies as he was flying along, and faced it over and over again 23 times in World War II. Here's my mother, who was a registered nurse, and who for 50 years, no, I'm not exaggerating, for 50 years was a volunteer for the Red Cross, was in the regional director, she was a local person, and she, for 50 years, conducted all of the blood drawings in our community, which is one of the reasons that I got drained of blood. My mother was a Red Cross vampire, and if you didn't give her blood, you didn't get to eat. Now, that wasn't quite true, but that was the implication, the soft, fun implication of it. And here are my grandparents, the taller one who lost his mother and his farm in the early 1900s as the bankers were getting ready to set up the Fed Reserve, and they wanted to have a whole bunch of people out of business, and farms fell as a result of one of their crashes. So they lost their farm. And on the other side is my other grandfather, who walked for miles each way to protect his ranch and worked all day at the lumber mill, and then walked all the way back and did his chores on the ranch. And they, like the others, were impoverished through the Depression because of the bankers, right? It's all a game. And then you've got Gödel Rothschild, who says, if my sons did not want war, there would be no war. So World War I was a joke, right? World War II was a joke. Vietnam War, the Korean War, the Iraqi War, the Afghani wars, they're all games. They're not funny to us, but it makes them vast fortunes, and they've been playing these trade games and using various entities, United Nations, UNICEF, Special Aid, Red Cross, the Clinton Foundation, and hundreds of others, and every one of them where there is a chance to make money and to pass stuff back and forth, every one of them is a vehicle for it. So we can have the war against, and this is the final one, we've got wars, right, that create emergency situations. So we've got little Georgie Bush, who said, we've got a war against terror. Well, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. We create an emergency situation which allows us to have the government, to have special benefits, to have special authority, to create an emergency situation, And then we keep the emergency. This is not an emergency like a hurricane or a skirmish or a brief altercation. When you have the war against terror and you are concurrently creating the terrorists, you're concurrently financing the terrorists, as both little Georgie Bush and Hussein did. You have the Hegelian dialect in perfect order. It is problem, reaction, solution, and it is ongoing. It is all the time. And there's always a problem. There always has to be a reaction, and there is always a solution, and the solution is caused by the same people who create the problem. So the perfect and ultimate false flag is to have a war against terror, a war on terror, against terror, with terror, or because of terror, or because we create terror. It is a perfect ongoing false flag and hoaxing system that draws people in, that creates the loss of blood, the loss of life, all kinds of PTSD and the rest of that. And at the same time, behind it, and under the subterfuge of it, people are making money. People are making money with the military, they're making money with the industrial contract, they're making money with transportation, they're making money hiding and protecting things. They are protecting their international assets, whether it's oil or gas or territory or drugs or drug production or drug farms. It allows for the creation of an emergency situation where people in those war-torn territories lose track of their children. The parents die. The kids are passed off. There are injured people that are cut up for pieces. I hate to be dark about it, and it is the worst of possible times. But in those pieces, every part of that is an opportunity to make money. Every part of it. We forget, why do they do this? Why do they do that? Well, they do it every time they put it together. They say, well, if we do this, we could do this, this, and this. And if you followed 9/11, which is just a prime example of it, if you followed 9/11, you find out that they get rid of, not only do they attack the Pentagon, they get rid of the investigation for the $2.6 trillion that's missing. That makes it disappear. There are 3 or 4 investigations ongoing that have to do with the Twin Towers and Building Number 7, and guess what? They all get crunched in the process. Everything works out perfectly. The Patriot Act gets cared for. We get to try all the rest of the stuff. And not only do they do that, but if they get away with it, and if they can make their scheme, their stupid little story, stick, then they say, as the Israelis did with the attack on the Liberty, well, we can get away with it here, so look what we could do anywhere else we see fit. It not only gets them a license for what it was they intended to do, but it proves the stupidity of us beyond that, which gives them license to do more and worse. So as long as we continue to let these false flags float in and out, the Sandy Hook and the rest of this stuff that are total hoaxes, as long as we do that, we keep licensing them for more. We keep licensing them to make more out of us as sheep, to make more money from us for all these reasons, to march us off to war. And so I have my parents who believed in this system, who believed that we should be good citizens, that we should contribute to our lives, not only to ourselves and to our children, but to our community, to our country, and to the nonprofit benefits of individuals all over the world. They committed to that process, and they were used to make money for the dark side of it, for those dark side folks to gain control. So it is incumbent on me to say no more, right? How many of you is it incumbent upon to say no more? And for whom can you say it besides yourself? If our parents and grandparents had had the opportunity, they would have stood up. Will we? Will we? That's the next question. And let me give you one other piece from Q. Q pointed out the Armenian situation and the fact that there was a stand down, that tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people in the street caused the dictator, for all practical purposes, who went from prime minister to president and was using changes in the Constitution for his own ends to stay in power, forced him to resign and step down. Folks, think about this. When is it that we are going to be in the streets? When is it that the velvet demonstration of this country pushes us to the place where all of this crap goes away? When is it? And if not us, who? And if not now, when? When are we going to step up? So I have something that I am going to give you this week. And I hope that we, as part of that process, step out beyond this and do something more than simply click on the YouTube, okay? Yes, I am being provocative, and I make no apologies, because if we don't, the things that my parents stood for mean nothing. Thank you.